What if the biggest changes about moving abroad were things that you never expected? I'm talking about moments that made me say, wait, do people really live like this? Hello, I am Kimberly Ann, also known as Expat on a Budget. In 2022, I left the United States and moved by myself to Portugal, sight unseen, and with no support system. And I am here to lead you on your unknown adventure. Today, I am here to talk about the biggest surprises about life in Portugal and things that I did not expect. But first, I would love it if you would subscribe. The first big surprise was the pace of life. So in the US, I was used to go, 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 do yesterday, get it all done, drive, on and on and on, rinse and repeat. And life in Portugal is basically the opposite. It is slow, it is calm. And as a matter of fact, their two favorite things to say are calma, tranquila. And they often say, don't worry, it'll all work out. But they mean it. So, like when people in the US have said to you, calm down. It's it's said with such, it's rude. Number one, it's just super, super rude. And then it's said with this like almost like superiority. Like I'm calm, but you're not, but they're not. And I don't know if you're like me, but I hate it when people tell me what to do. It just, oh, it's like nails on a chalkboard. It just irks me. And if somebody tells me what to do, I usually do the opposite. And I'm not saying that this is the best option, but that's what I do in spite of myself. So I use this as an example. If somebody's like, don't jump off a cliff, you'll die. I'm like, F you, I'm jumping. I don't recommend that. I'm just using that as an example of the way that I felt I was being told what to do in the United States and the way that people oftentimes deal with each other there. And it's completely different here. So, and I guess that's like reason number two, the thing that I didn't expect, the second one. So the first one is the pace of life, the calm pace of life, but that goes into the way that people talk to you here. So as mentioned, they're always saying, or often saying, calma, tranquila. And they say it like that, like with this love and support, like they really care. And they really want you to live your best life and just to be chill, which is so funny because I'm from California and I grew up with the chill out, dude. Okay. I was a teenager basically in the 80s. I'm a Gen Xer and I'm on the top end of the Gen Xer. I'm 59 right now, but I really had that kind of built into me, I should say, baked into me. And it wasn't that way, right? In the US, and maybe things changed over time, but there was so much anxiety and so much striving to do more and be better and keep up with the Joneses. And yeah, so that's not Portugal at all. And it's taken me a while. It took me about a year before I settled into the slower pace of life and the calmness and the I can do it when it gets done, which, in a work sense is not the greatest. I'm still a workaholic and I still love to work, but I now take breaks. And so I haven't burnt out. In the US, I was working two full-time jobs before I left and I burnt out. I was writing books, so that was one of my jobs. Well, I wrote 30 novels and I published I published 20 in a couple of years, a few years. It didn't take me very long, which was insane. It was a crazy pace. I couldn't keep going and I burnt out. And I was also a full-time acupuncturist, but I stopped writing for 2 years because of the burnout. And so far, knock on wood, that hasn't happened to me here. So that's reason number one and reason number two. And surprise number three is the way that people prioritize, and it has to do with the first two, right? The way that people prioritize family and community and friendship over work. I love this. It has also taken me quite some time to get into that mode, but now I actually take a lunch break every single day. I take an hour lunch break. I have never done that in my life. And it's just, it's night and day. It's helping me with my mental health and my physical health and my overall well-being. It's self-care, really. And they just do that naturally in a lot of Europe, most of Europe, I will say. I know for sure they do it in Spain. I'm not sure about France, but they do it in Italy. And it's so important. And most times, or a lot of times, people will take that time and go out to lunch with friends. And I do that. I will stop in the middle of the day and either meet a friend for lunch at a cafe or sometimes go on a walk with a friend, a dog walk, go to the park. It's amazing. That I never did that. I don't think I ever did that in the US. I met friends for breakfast before work, but then we would just go, 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 go all day. So this has been a huge game changer for me. And a lot of times, most of the time, most small mom and pop stores here will close for lunch. Now they close for a couple hours because they're also running errands and doing whatever they need to do in the middle of the day. And it's super cool. Like in Italy, I remember the first time I went was in 1990, and I was out in the middle of the day trying to get some food and everything was closed. And I said, "What is this?" And they said, "It's siesta." So I love that about the culture, the European culture. And it's really, I've always thought, why don't we do that in the US? Well, because we're a do more yesterday culture. And I don't like that. So one example of this is I have my little favorite stores that I go to on a regular basis around my neighborhood. And I talk about this a lot. I really try to go to Portuguese owned as much as possible stores and smaller stores and support the local culture and the local economy. And so one of my favorite places is a flower shop. And I go there when I can, not super often, although I will say that the flowers are extremely affordable. When I buy my mom flowers every year, it's $100 for, 4 tulips. And here it's 15 euros for this enormous, huge, gorgeous bouquet of flowers. So anyway, I go to this flower shop and I went there and she was closed and it had a sign closed for lunch. And I saw her and she saw me and she knows me and she opened the door and I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry you're closed for lunch." And she said, "Oh no, she said, "It's okay, but can you come back in like 20 minutes?" And I said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I'm meeting a friend," which I was, so I can't, but I totally respect your time. And she said, "No, no, I'll make you a bouquet." And I was like, "Well, I'm, making the bouquet. I want the bouquet to take to my friend." And my friend had to go to work. So we had a specific amount of time we had that we could meet. And she said, "No, no, it's fine." And she made the bouquet. And I said, "I'm going to come back after I meet my friend and take you out. Because, what are we missing here? What were you gonna do?" And she said, "Well, I was gonna go around the corner and have a coffee." And I said, "Well, I'm gonna take you for a coffee." So I did. So we ran around the corner and I paid for her coffee, no big deal. And we sat for 15 minutes and had a coffee. And it was amazing. It was so incredible. So that's just one example. So the next surprise, which is surprise number four, is the way people greet each other. And every time you see somebody, you can't just start talking. In the US, we just start talking. And maybe we'll ask, how are you today? But especially when we're texting, we just ask a question. We just blah. And here you have to say, good morning, good afternoon, how are you, good day, even over text, even just hello, you have to. And in a store, when you go into a store, and I have an example for this too, you have to say, hello, how are you, good day, something like that. So I went into a store and I said, where's the oatmeal? And the woman said, good, and she said it in Portuguese, obviously, but she said, good day. And I said, yeah, where's the oatmeal? And she said, good day. And I said, yeah, but, and she just put her hands on her hips and just said, good day. And I got it. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, good day. Because they're hello or how are you or have a good day. They just say good day. But it means have a good day when you leave. And so it's bon dia. And they say it as a greeting, obviously during the day. They say, good night when it's nighttime, but they say it for everything. So they say it for the introductory greeting when you first run into somebody or you first go into a store, you always say bon dia, and when you leave, you say bon dia. So it is used for the intro and the outro and the exit, and it's really important. So that was a whole new thing for me, and it. So it just all of it together teaches me to slow down. There are a lot more things that surprise me, but I want to keep this short and I'll go into more in a future video. So I will talk about the climate and the weather here because that's a huge one. Huge, huge, huge. So I live in Porto, which is the north of Portugal. And I always use California as an example. I'm from California. So I use California as an example. And before I moved here, and it's almost the same latitude. So I really thought, yes, this is true. I would say Porto is very similar to San Francisco, the weather-wise. Lisbon is very similar to Los Angeles, and the Algarve, which is the south, is very similar to San Diego. And while this is true, I did not take the humidity into account. So it is super, super, super humid here, which at first was really hard for me because California is basically a desert. And I was used to dry heat, dry cold. And when it is humid, the heat is hotter, feels hotter, and the cold feels colder. So, but it's really good for your skin. It took me also about a year, maybe even a year and a half to get used to the humidity here. Now, when I go back to visit California, I feel like a raisin. I'm like, wow, it's so dry. So I love it now, but there are things I don't love about it, which is the cold and when it's super, super hot. In Porto, in the north, it doesn't get really hot. There are maybe 3 or 4 days during the summer that are 90 degrees, and that's 30 degrees Celsius, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's rare. So most of the time you can see we're at the end of June and I'm wearing a long sleeve or half long sleeve top indoors and this in the sun, and I'm fine. It's fine. It's about low 80s, high 70s, low 80s. In the summer, it can get to mid 80s a lot of the time, but it's lovely. And you walk on the shady side of the street. It's great. Lisbon gets hotter. Lisbon's always warmer. And then the Algarve gets super hot. But in the winter, it is flipping cold. And I don't like it. I don't like it. And even the cold I could handle, but the rain in Porto, the rain is awful. It rains about, I often say it rains about 85% of the year. It does depend on the year. The first year I was here, it rained about 4 months. The second year, it rained 10 months. And this year, it rained about 8 months. So and the year's not over. So I'm saying a year to date. So from last June to this June. The rain is rain and wind, and the rain comes in sideways. And you have to wear, and this is no joke, plastic pants and a plastic cover. I'd wear a raincoat that's plastic. And your umbrella will be turned inside out. It's terrible. I have gone out on several occasions and come back completely drenched. Does it happen every day? No. Does it happen a lot? Yes. And also it gets cold enough that and there's no central heating. So it gets cold enough that I am wearing a wool sweater and a parka indoors. That's how cold it is. Now we do have heaters. You have to have standalone heaters, and I will have one in my office, which is where I am now. I will have one in the living room, and that's it. And I use the oil heaters the electric oil heaters. They don't take up a lot of energy. They work really well. If it's super cold, I will have a fan or a electric heater that blows, I don't know what those are called, behind it to blow hot air at me, or even just blowing hot. And there have been times when I've just had the electric blow heater blowing hot air into my face because it's so cold. So it takes getting used to. Most like old apartments will only have single pane windows. Mine fortunately has double pane, but it's still cold. It's so cold. And like I said, I'm wearing a wool sweater, like a thick, thick, thick wool sweater, and a scarf, and sometimes a hat, and sometimes also the parka indoors. So that was a surprise. And I read about it and I didn't believe it. And I'm glad I chose not to believe it, because maybe that would have stopped me from moving here. So that's a nugget I'm going to tell you is don't believe everything you hear, and don't let don't even believe me. This is my experience. I'm telling you my experience. Maybe somebody coming from the Midwest or from Quebec, you're not going to think it's that cold here, right? Are you coming from New York or upstate New York where it's super cold? You're going to be like, this is nothing. I actually have a friend here from New York. And in the winter, when I'm shivering with the wool sweater and the parka, she's wearing what I'm wearing now, and maybe a little light jacket. So that's important to know, right? I'm from California. I have a different sense of what's cold and what's warm. If you're from Hawaii, you're going to be cold in the north. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for watching. If you are interested in 4 free downloadable workbooks to help you move forward, please join my newsletter. The link is in the description. Also, the free newsletter, which is weekly, is packed with honest stories and practical tips for moving abroad.